If I want to follow the low FODMAP diet for IBS, which foods do I need to avoid? Which fruits and vegetables, for example, might make my bloating worse? And do I need to cut out dairy? How long do I even need to avoid these foods for in the first place? Now stay tuned, because today we will delve into the difficult but often rewarding elimination phase of the low FODMAP diet. Hi again guys, and welcome back to episode 4 of my series Gut Time. My name is Didi and I'm a low FODMAP diet qualified registered dietitian with Didititian.com. In this video series we explore all things gut. Now over the last 3 videos we looked specifically at the causes and symptoms of IBS. We discovered 17 surprisingly simple ways to improve your IBS symptoms, and we took a peek at what the low FODMAP diet for IBS actually entails. The links for those videos are in the description box below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button there in the bottom right corner to be the first to see the videos as they come out. Today we will turn our eye to phase 1 of the low FODMAP diet, and it's possibly the most complicated phase at that, the elimination phase. As I have mentioned before, I myself follow the low FODMAP diet, and honestly, when I was starting off the diet myself, I found that getting my head around this complicated first phase of the diet took a lot of studying, checking and double checking. Now to some extent I found myself first just munching away on foods that I knew were freely allowed, and then I gradually widened my horizons to foods that were allowed in specific quantities. Now just to recap on my previous video, the low FODMAP diet is a diet that has been shown to reduce symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome for up to 86% of people with IBS. The diet works by avoiding certain foods that are easily fermented in the gut. Now before trying the low FODMAP diet, it is worth trying easier and less risky diet changes first, which are often known as the first line dietary strategies. And I discussed these in my second video of the series. The low FODMAP diet requires you to work your way through 3 different phases. The elimination phase, followed by the reintroduction phase, and finishing with the maintenance phase. Today we will home in on the first and possibly most complicated phase, the elimination phase. Now we do recommend that you follow this diet under the supervision of a registered dietitian, as it can be very tricky to get all the nutrients you need while working your way through the elimination phase. The word FODMAP stands for the following: fermentable, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides and polyols. During this first phase of the low FODMAP diet, you try to eat a diet that is low in these fermentable carbohydrates. Each of these types of sugars are easily broken down in the gut by bacteria, and the fermentation that can then take place in our guts can create gas, which can leave us feeling bloated, sore and constipated, or give you diarrhea depending on the type of IBS that you have. So the idea of the elimination phase of the low FODMAP diet is to, for a while at least, avoid certain foods that contain these high levels of fermentable carbs. You do this for a set period of time, and you keep a close eye on your bowel habits and IBS type symptoms. Usually this phase is trialled for 4 to 8 weeks, and it's important to know that people who have the type of IBS that causes more diarrhea might see results faster than those who suffer more with constipation. Either way, if your symptoms improve significantly during the trial period, then great, you are luckily someone who responds to the diet. And then at this stage, when your symptoms have improved enough, you can then enter the reintroduction phase of the diet, where you bring each FODMAP group back into your diet carefully, just to try and figure out which exact group of carbs you respond to. However, if your symptoms do not improve enough during the elimination phase, you are possibly someone whose IBS symptoms are not related to high FODMAP foods. At this stage, you can either go back to eating as you did before, or you can try and stick to the diet for a few weeks longer. However, it isn't recommended that you stay in this elimination phase of the low FODMAP diet for prolonged periods of time. I mean, this phase of the diet is very restrictive and can put you at risk of nutritional deficiencies. So everyone on the low FODMAP diet must eventually move on to reintroduction and maintenance phases, or go back to their usual eating habits. So, what foods do I need to avoid when I follow the elimination phase of the low FODMAP diet? Well, in this video I will go through some of the more common high FODMAP foods to avoid. However, some foods will be allowed in very small amounts, and it's really down to avoiding portions of FODMAP containing foods that are likely to cause your symptoms. There are some apps that I have found very useful in helping me find out what portions of foods are considered low or high in FODMAPs. So for example, the Monash Low FODMAP app is regularly updated with their latest FODMAP test results. I will also have a link below to my blog article on this topic that has some useful tables of foods to avoid and portions of foods that you can take while on the low FODMAP diet. I recommend that you print these off, for example, and have them with you when you go grocery shopping. For today's video, I will go through the high FODMAP foods by food group. And afterwards, I will take a slightly closer look at exactly in what foods you can find each of the 4 types of fermentable carbohydrate. So first, let's have a look at cereals. During this phase of the diet, you will need to avoid all foods made from rye, wheat, barley, spelt, and other grains such as amaranth, kamut, and bourgal. Generally, grain and carbohydrate foods that are gluten-free or are made from oats are lower in FODMAPs. And this can include gluten-free bread and breakfast cereals. Rice, potatoes, quinoa, polenta, and corn products also tend to be low FODMAP. And surprisingly, sourdough spelt bread is also low FODMAP, as long as you take no more than 2 slices at a time. Sourdough bread has already actually been fermented to some extent, meaning that there's less fermenting to do once it reaches your gut, which means less bloating. Fruits. When it comes to fruits, there are quite a few specific ones that you are advised to avoid. These include apples, pears, apricots, peaches, nectarines, plums, blackberries, cherries, mango, and watermelon, as well as dried fruits such as prunes, dates, figs, and sultanas. Now, with any remaining fruits, you are recommended to stick to up to 2 portions a day, with an example of 1 portion being about what you could fit into your hand. So about 1/3 of a banana, 10 strawberries, 2 small mandarins, about a cup of melon. Rhubarb and fresh pineapple are allowed in slightly larger amounts. For example, 1 cup of each would count as a portion. Now looking at vegetables. Vegetables that you are recommended to avoid on the low FODMAP diet include artichoke, asparagus, cauliflower, mushroom, garlic, leek and onion, any types, and all types of beans, peas and lentils. Again, with the remaining vegetables, try to stick to a maximum of 5 portions a day. For example, a portion of vegetables would be about a cup of leafy green veg, such as spinach, a cup of turnip, or red, yellow and orange peppers, or 1 tomato. Some vegetables are to be taken only in smaller portions, such as half a cup of green peppers, 5 pods of mange tout, or half a cob of sweet corn. And some beans and lentils may be tolerated in very small amounts, about 1/4 cup if they've been boiled or tinned. Now, I do hear you wondering, what can I flavour my food with if I have to avoid onions and garlic? Well, you can use garlic oil, for example, as an alternative to garlic in your dishes, and the green part of a spring onion is also relatively well tolerated. Nuts and seeds. Cashews and pistachio nuts are also high in FODMAPs and may need to be avoided. Yet most nuts and seeds can be taken in small amounts, such as 10 almonds, hazelnuts, walnuts, Brazil nuts or pecan nuts, about 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, or 20 boiled chestnuts. 2 tablespoons of most seeds also tends to be a portion. Now looking at sugars. So fructose, honey and agave syrup are high FODMAP foods, and several artificial sugars ending in the 2 letters OL need to be avoided as well, such as sorbitol, xylitol and mannitol. These are often found in things like sugar-free gums and sweets, liquid forms of medication, as well as diabetic-specific foods. Now, do talk to your doctor about changing to a tablet form of medication if you are concerned that your liquid medication contains a high FODMAP sugar. So table sugar, 1 tablespoon of maple syrup and half a tablespoon of golden syrup are lower FODMAP sugars. And for lower calorie alternatives, try aspartame, stevia and canderel. So meat, fish, poultry and eggs. There are no FODMAPs in these foods, and so there's no restriction on them except what is mentioned in the healthy eating guidelines. If you are trying to reduce your intake of animal foods, you could choose to, for example, instead have about 170 grams of firm plain tofu, 75 grams of corn mince, or about 100 grams of plain tempeh. 1 very small portion of boiled and drained beans or lentils a day is also permitted. Next, dairy. So dairy does not need to be completely avoided in the elimination phase of the low FODMAP diet, unless you suspect that you react to dairy. And even then, most people who react to lactose can tolerate up to 12 grams of lactose a day. So you can take a small portion of milk and yogurt and larger portions of cheese while on the low FODMAP diet. Now, lactose-free dairy is freely allowed while on the low FODMAP diet, and coconut milk, almond milk, hazelnut milk and rice milk can be taken in portions up to 250 ml. Do check my list of FODMAP foods in the link below for exact amounts. And next, looking at drinks. Drinks that you are recommended to avoid are lactose-containing cow's milk in large amounts and drinks made from cow's milk, goat's milk, oat milk, soy milk, rum, apple and pear-based drinks, dessert wines, and several herbal teas, including chicory, fennel, oolong, dandelion, and chamomile tea. Now, when it comes to drinking coffee, try and limit the strength and amount that you drink of it. However, water, black tea, peppermint tea, green tea, and lactose-free hot chocolate, for example, are good, suitable alternatives. So, after going through the different food groups, we'll take a quick look at which FODMAPs are found in which types of food. First, we'll look at oligosaccharides. Now there are two types of oligosaccharides. The first group are known as fructooligosaccharides, also known as FOS or fructans. We can find these in grains like wheat and rye and in some vegetables such as onion and garlic. The second group are galacto-oligosaccharides, or also known as GOS, and these are mostly found in beans, chickpeas and other pulse vegetables. Next are disaccharides. Lactose is a carbohydrate often found in dairy foods, and it does tend to be poorly digested by many adults. Monosaccharides, well, fructose is a type of sugar found in several fruits, including mango, and it's also found in honey, and it's often added to food during processing, sometimes in the form of things like high fructose corn syrup. And the final group of FODMAPs are polyols. Now these are sugar alcohols and can be found in some fruits and vegetables, as well as in artificially sweetened foods, such as diabetes-specific foods and sugar-free gums. Now, after all this talking about avoiding the many fruits and vegetables, grains, drinks and sugars on the low FODMAP diet, what would a normal day of eating look like during the elimination phase? Well, for example, a breakfast could include a bowl of cornflakes with lactose-free milk and a piece of low FODMAP fruit, such as an orange. Or you could go for 2 slices of sourdough spelt bread with a boiled egg and a slice of tomato, or maybe some jam made from a low FODMAP fruit such as raspberries. Next, lunch could be a sourdough spelt bread sandwich with a few slices of chicken or ham and some tomato and lettuce. Or maybe a baked potato with tuna mayo and chives. Then for dinner, you could go for your typical meat, veg, potato dinner, choosing maybe 2 or 3 portions of low FODMAP veg, just carrots and turnip. Or you could go for a low FODMAP vegetable stir fry maybe, with some grilled chicken and rice. Suitable snacks to munch on throughout the day could be a small portion of melon, maybe 2 rice cakes and peanut butter or cheese, maybe perhaps a small snack-sized bar of chocolate. I mean, there are plenty of options out there. Now check out my blog post, you can find the link in the description below for lots more delicious meal and snack ideas. Now be aware, this first phase of the diet is difficult. It's incredibly tough getting your head around the endless lists of foods to avoid and portions of foods that you are allowed, and it's easy to make a few slip-ups. And a little warning, eating out is even more complicated. Get comfortable asking your waiter for small changes to be made to your meal, and be prepared to pick around high FODMAP vegetables in your dish that you did not simply expect to find there. This diet is tough, but as you settle into the first phase of the diet and you start noticing some results, you will soon realise that all your hard work and nitpicking was worth the effort. So are you new at the low FODMAP diet and have any questions? Well, don't be afraid to ask them below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Or are you a seasoned pro at the low FODMAP diet at this stage and want to share your elimination phase experiences, maybe the good and the bad? Go for it, because I'm sure many of us can relate to your stories and we'd love to hear them. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to be the first to catch my new videos as they come out. And of course, I'll be continuing the conversation on my Facebook, Twitter and Pinterest pages, so join me there for some great infographics and motivational quotes. Thank you so much. Bye.